Hello! Welcome to Occult Lessons. Let me turn that back on. Let me turn this back on. I was working on something else earlier and I forgot I had changed things to record. Welcome back to Occult Lessons. Today we're going to be taking a bit of a dive into Daoism. Not Taoism, Daoism. We'll give a minute and see who pops in. Hello, Leon, Lobsoul, Cupcakes. Thanks for joining us. Okay, it looks like the chat box is working. For some reason, yesterday it wasn't, but yesterday was a day of many failures. I don't know why, but here, let's make it a little... There we go. Hey, Faku, welcome. So today we're going to take a look at Daoism, which is... a philosophy, a religion, a mystic tradition. It's a lot of things to a lot of people. I hate that little zombie man. I don't know how to make him go away. He just likes to show up sometimes in my streams. I'm just gonna have to uninstall the alert box, which I hate, but thanks for joining us. Someone said hello, but it didn't show up over here. Oh, that's it. Okay, Henry over on Facebook. Hello. I'll keep that over here. So... To understand Daoism, we have to understand where it came from, which is ye olden days in the Warring States period of Chinese history. What Daoism is really a collection of a lot of older ideas into a new form, which is also what Confucianism is. China has one of the oldest histories in the world, probably the oldest continuing nation in the world, 5,000 years of history, and a lot of the ideas and concepts in Daoism already existed by the time that we say Daoism is created. It was brought to life by Lao Tzu, whose name is kind of a joke. It means the little old man, the old boy, that kind of thing. Because the idea was that this man was incredibly wise and also young at heart. There was so many mythic ideas behind his there were stories that said he was born with gray hair. There are stories that he was hundreds of years old. This man was a larger-than-life figure. Did he really exist? He might have. There probably was a person who first, brought these concepts together. He probably wasn't this mythic figure of the immortal Lao Tzu that came to be later. The actual book from which Daoism came from, the Daodejing, we have basically historians have decided was created and in the form we know of it now a couple hundred years after Lao Tzu supposedly wrote it. The oldest version we have is from like 300 BCE. He supposedly was from around 600 BCE-ish. There's different versions of when people say he lived. The most popular one is that he was a contemporary of Confucius in the Warring States era. So, 400 to 200 BCE, China is a bit of a mess. There's a lot of civil unrest and a lot of different philosophical ideas, a lot of different schools of thought who are all fighting to be the one that gets to influence the emperor. Hey, Locus. Hey, Akatsuki. Thanks for joining us. During this period, Confucianism comes to life, which is a really big influential concept, a form of ethics and politics that defines how you should live and how you should rule a state, and it becomes incredibly formative to politics in China. Also, a form of legalism is another school of thought, which is very authoritarian. Basically says everybody's evil, so we have to have a lot of extreme laws to control them. Daoism is nothing like these, and unlike the others, Daoism was not presented as an option so much as the story goes Lao Tzu kind of created it and said, bye! Rumor, history, folktale says that he was he worked in the imperial court as like a record keeper, and he grew tired with the ways of society in the world and decided to withdraw. And so he hopped on his ride, his little, I think it was an ox. I think he rode an ox out to the borders of China, and just as he was about to pass through the gate and leave China forever, the guardsman at the gate tried to convince him to stay. He's like, please, you're so wise and have so much to teach us, please don't leave us. And when he couldn't convince him, he said, well, at least will you write it down? So Lao Tzu goes away, and 3 days later he comes back and says, here you go, the Daodejing. It was 5,000 Chinese characters, 81 chapters, incredibly short. And he left it behind with the gate guards keeper and left China. Now, compare that origin story to the Buddha. You know, the guy that spent like 40 years wandering the country spreading his teachings. Or Confucius, who spent his entire life trying to convince politicians to follow his example and failed and ended up in his old age basically miserable that he didn't succeed. Lao Tzu wrote it down and said bye. He did not preach. He did not try to convert people to his way of belief. He tried more in Taoism. It's more about being the example rather than preaching it. It is far better to live the right way and lead by example than it is to get up on a pulpit and teach. So he doesn't preach. He doesn't teach. He just kind of checks out. So what is the Daodejing? You probably, if you're in the West, it was originally translated as Tao, T-A-O. Nowadays, you'll see it more with a D because it is the new form of translating Chinese is to translate it the way that it's supposed to be pronounced, rather, which makes it a lot easier to pronounce. It's supposed to be pronounced like a D, Daodejing, instead of Tao Te Ching, or king was one of the translations. So Dao, the first word, D-A-O, is a word that basically means the way. This is a really metaphysical kind of term because it can mean the way in terms of the way the universe works. It can be the way nature works, the cycle of nature, the cycle of life. But it is also the way that human beings should live to best live in coordination with nature. The happiest we can live, the best life we can live is the way, which is Tao. Oh, thank you, Santa Mortero. I'm doing very well, thank you. De, T-E or D-E, is power or virtue. Basically, it is the active form of Tao in the world. If you're going to live the way, live the Tao, then you want to live virtuously, which is to emulate the Tao in the world. In the last form, Jing, this book. So basically it translates to the classic of the way of virtue, or the book of virtuous way, or like that kind of thing. Different people translate it differently. It was 81 chapters of short phrases, almost poetry, discussing what the Tao is, how to live by the Tao, and improve your life and live ethically. It was really different compared to other things at the time. It did not reference any historical events or fictional events. It didn't reference any fictional or historical people. It was not like it wasn't really preachy. It was poetic. It was funny. It had like a lot of contradictions built in on purpose. It is really playful and open to interpretation and discussion, which is what a lot of people ended up doing. There was a big development around discussing the Tao and the Daodejing. It had really evocative imagery and wordplay. It was really freeing because it was unconstrained by tradition. It didn't really follow in the tradition of a lot of other works at the time. It heavily influenced Chinese art, and more commentaries were written about this book than any other book of the time. It was huge. Will I consider doing oh crap, how do I pronounce this word again? I know exactly what you're talking about, Faku, and it's something I've considered. We may get to it eventually. Daoism does influence quite a lot of other traditions, just as they are influenced by Daoism, but we will get to that. Hey, Diana and James, thanks for joining us. So, why was Daoism so different at the time? We'll get into what it actually believed, but one of the interesting things that the Daodejing did was it turned traditional ideas on their head by saying what is good and what's not good. It had a different idea. Confucianism has a very patriarchal system built into it. The yang, the male, is good. The yin, the female, is not. Daoism turns that around. The best way to be in Daoism is to be feminine, to be receptive, to be like water, to yield rather than stand firm, to bend with the flow of nature, to be like water, which is really, really different when you compare it to Confucianism and other ideas at the time. Legalism, which was very totalitarian. Like, Daoism was a lot more about being relative, being peaceful. It was very anti-war. And later forms of Daoism were very anti-politics. The first one kind of dealt with trying to teach rulers to be good rulers. The next big book after the Daodejing said, fuck it. Go into the wilderness, abandon society, screw all this, let's go. Anyway, it was a really unique work. The work that changes the next work is the Zhuangzi. I've practiced how to say this. Zhuangzi. This was the guy that basically popularized Daoism. Lao Tzu created it, brought together a lot of older ideas and themes and kind of brought them into something new and wrote it down. Zhuangzi popularized it, wrote his own version that was addressed more at individuals rather than the big picture of society and leadership and ruling, and also stepped back a bit from politics and said, let's all go live in the woods. Let's screw this. Politics sucks. It was also incredibly playful, incredibly contradictory, and very silly and very fun. Let's see if I find the... Where did I put that story? I've marked a few things here. I just dropped the book. This is the one about evil. Let me grab the other books that dropped. See if we can find the fish story. All right, so this story is one that compares how Confucianism looks at the world versus how Daoism looks at the world. When asked how one should recompense injury, Confucius said, recompense injury with kindness, recompense injury, or no, let's see, what, okay, he approached, that's confusing, buddy. Confucius said, recompense injury with justice. In other words, if someone hurts you, get justice, go to the law, that kind of thing. Lao Tzu said, good I would meet with goodness, the not good I would also meet with goodness, for thus I would actualize goodness. The faithful I would meet with faithfulness, the not faithful I would also meet with faithfulness, for thus I actualize faith. If you are only faithful when other people are faithful to you, are you really faithful? Or if you're only good when people are good to you, are you really good? Daoism is very much about being good to everyone, equalization, treating everyone the same way, the way you'd want to be treated all the time, no matter how they treat you. There's a line in the Daodejing that's about if you owe someone a debt, you pay them. If someone owes you a debt, you forgive them. It's about not creating strife, letting things go, going with the flow, that kind of thing. So let's get to, where's the fish story? I think I dropped the book with the fish story. Here we go. Fish story! So this was not Lao Tzu, this was the second guy, Zhuangzi, who is supposed to have said this in his work. Let's see here. They do a lot of wordplay in these things, talking about what is meaning, the relativity of everything. Nothing really has definite absolute meaning because everything is relative, and this is kind of related to that. The fish trap exists because of the fish. Once you've gotten the fish, you can forget the trap. The rabbit snare exists because of the rabbit. Once you've gotten the rabbit, you can forget the snare. Words exist because of meaning. Once you've gotten the meaning, you can forget the words. Where can I find a man who has forgotten words so I can have a word with him? That's the kind of wordplay and conceptual discussion that these kind of works really go into. I accidentally closed my Word document. Here it is. So what does Daoism actually believe? What do you actually get if you read the Daodejing and try to figure out the good way to be? It is, one of the biggest phrases is, the way to do is to be. It is very much a in-the-moment kind of philosophy. A key part of Daoism is called Wu Wei which is often translated in English to non-action, but it doesn't really capture what that word is supposed to mean. Better translations are creative, where did it go? Creative quietude, or pure effectiveness. It's the idea of balancing out the amount of energy needed and the amount used. Being so effective that you waste no energy. And so what you're doing looks almost effortless because you're so perfectly in line with the universe and with the Tao. There's a story of a butcher who was shown he could use this knife to cut apart a cow, and he'd been using it for 20 years. It had never rusted. It had never broken. It's perfect. And people were like, well, how do you do that? How do you keep your knife from rusting and breaking? He says, I cut right between the tendon, like right between the bones where there's a gap. And so because I am so perfect, so exact in where I cut, I never wear the weapon down. I never wear the knife down. That's the idea behind pure effectiveness, being so effective in how you use your energy that you perfectly balance the use of it. You're not wasting energy. So non-action means more not wasting energy needlessly than it does not doing anything. You do things to the exact amount of energy that is needed. You don't overdo things. It is moderation in performance of actions, which also means you don't want to be showy. You don't want to brag. You don't want to bicker with people. You don't want to fight. You don't want to waste time and energy with these extra excess things. A lot of this is kind of critiquing Confucianism and some other things in Chinese culture of the time, because there were a lot of rituals. There was a lot of showmanship, advancement in court, politics. And Lao Tzu said, none of this matters. Stop it. It doesn't matter. Oh, man. I'm sorry to hear that, Phil. Thanks for everybody who's just joined us. Good to see you, Ileani, and everybody. Let's see. So, on top of using the exact right amount of energy and not wasting, you don't want to attach yourself to any outcome, because that just leads to disappointment, and disappointment is gonna, lead to trouble. You're trying to cut out as much strife and as many problems as you can. You want to live in the moment of the process, not what's to come. If you're so busy worrying about your history test that you can't focus while you're studying, well, then you're going to fail it. Don't worry about the outcome. Study. Focus on the process in the moment rather than thinking ahead. But this also means, in essence, life as well. Don't focus on the fact that you might die tomorrow. Or, tomorrow you get, horrible things coming. Live in the now. This is the moment. It is only by focusing on what we're doing right now that you can truly use your energy most effectively. Because you're wasting energy worrying on things. You're wasting energy considering fearing for the future. Live in the now and don't waste your energy on worry. It is a tradition that is very against competition, advancement, rewards, war, and fighting. If you compete, someone inevitably loses, and that's going to create strife. If you reward some people and not other people, you're going to cause strife. If you advance people and say, you are the court jester of blah, 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 well, now somebody else, might be disappointed or upset. All that kind of stuff causes trouble. War is the most extreme version of that. He did not like war. He hated soldiers. He basically said that it is antithetical to being human to wage war. It is antithetical to the existence of the universe to wage war. It should never be done. Now, that's not to say that Daoism is a doormat. It advocates defense, and it advocates doing what you have to protect people, to do good in the world, but not to, run out and try and conquer the universe. Inevitably, that's just going to fail. It is not going to, it's not going to work because it's never worked. Every tyrant in the world has never been able to conquer the entire world. You're going to waste so much time and energy. The people are going to turn on you. A lot of the Daodejing discusses how war leaves behind so much suffering, and it sows the seeds of rebellion and pain. And this period in history in China had a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So the people writing all this probably knew what they were talking about and probably had seen it firsthand. They are very much against the idea of absolutes. Nothing is absolutely anything. Nothing is good or evil, because it's always going to be relative to what position you're in and where you're standing. I got another story for you. This is the story of a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbor commiserated, only to be told, "Who knows what's good or bad?" It was true, for the next day the horse returned, bringing with it a drove of wild horses it had befriended. The neighbor reappeared, this time with congratulations for the windfall. He received the same response. Who knows what is good or bad? Again, this proved true, for the next day the farmer's son tried to mount one of the wild horses and fell, breaking his leg. More commiserations from the neighbor, which elicited the same question. Who knows what is good or bad? And for a fourth time, the farmer's point prevailed, for the following day, soldiers came by, commandeering for the army, and the son was exempted because of his injury. Who knows what's good or bad? You literally cannot know, because everything is relative. Something that seems bad in the moment can end up being having an outcome that turns out good for you later. Everything is so relative and so open to change that you really just have to kind of accept things as they are. Accept that things will change. Accept that good and bad things will happen, but those things will flow into new things, and new things will happen. Everything is cyclical. That's basically the whole idea here, which includes life and death. A very big Taoist priest teacher, there was a story of a man going to see him after his wife had died. The preacher, his wife had died, the monk's wife. Or not a monk, because he's married. You know what I'm saying? And he was like outside playing a drum, having fun. And the guy was like, dude, your wife died. What the hell? And he said, I know. And I was really sad. And then I realized she's just gone back into the cycle. And one day I'll see her again. I don't cry when someone goes and takes a nap, you know. They'll come back. She's taking a nap and she'll come back. Nature is a huge part of Taoism. Nature, their temples are built into the world that surrounds them. They are very much about emulating nature, living your life the way that nature does, because that's what the Tao is. The Tao is the way that energy and the natural world exists, and how we should emulate it as much as we can. Exist in our role. Don't be selfish. There's a lot of metaphors in the book that compare the way that nature works to the way that we should work. Like there's a whole chapter of a section where it just says what water is and how we should be like water. Water flows to the lowest point. We should be humble. Water moves around obstacles. We should be adaptive. You know, water can drunk by everybody and helps everybody. We should be helpful to everyone. You know, we should be like water. It's a lot of a very ecological standpoint where nature is our friend. You know, we like nature. It doesn't necessarily mean that, like, you know, they're not all like vegetarians. It's about respecting the cycle of life and the natural world. So what's represented by the circle of yin and yang? A couple of things. Yin and yang are a concept that existed before Taoism and were kind of absorbed part of it into Taoism, along with some older Chinese myths about the creation of the world and how everything came from an egg that separated into the yin and yang, became the sky and the earth. In Chinese thought, it represents everything. Everything has the energy of the yin and yang in them. And in Taoism, everything is about the balance and cycle of these things. We have them all inside us, and they are cycling through all of us, cycling through the world, cycling through life. Sometimes we're going to have this going on, sometimes we're going to have that. Unlike some other traditions, Taoism does focus far more on the feminine principle and references it multiple times in the Daodejing, because the yin embraces and embodies a lot of the things that Taoism really appreciates, which is being receptive to energy, creating life, respecting life, yielding the essence, the idea sexually that the female is the yielding one, the receptive one. You know, in Taoism, that idea is we go with the flow. It's the idea of bending and not breaking. There's a lot of importance put onto the interaction of opposites. It's basically believed that all life comes from the interaction of these opposites, of yin and yang, of qi, which is the life energy. The idea is that the Tao was first. From the Tao came qi, life energy. Qi became yin and yang, the two, opposites that create life. Those three together created everything. All right, so the last big point is, while there are opposites, it is important not to give preference to things in the world. When you name something as beautiful, you name something else as ugly. There's a section of the Daodejing that goes through and says, by naming long, you've named short. By naming tall, you've named, that kind of thing. And the idea there is that when you say a person is beautiful, you are inevitably saying someone else is comparatively ugly. And if you do that, you're going to create strife and problems in the world. You're going to create in your own heart a preference for something, when in reality you should live life treating everyone the same way. Love everyone the same way. It is very much a do unto others kind of thing. Taoism is about living in the moment, loving and treating everyone equally, being peacekeepers, being one with nature, treating everyone well, taking care of people, living more simply. It's there's a lot of discussion in the Tao about reducing complexity. You don't want to own a million things, because if you own a million things, well, oh crap, now I'm all stressed out about how I need more shelves to put my million things on. I need more rooms for my collectible vases, If you have a lot of stuff, it causes a lot of problems. Thieves are going to come and take all your shit. Like, it's stress. Lower the amount of stuff you have. Lower and make your life more simple. Live more like nature, like the Tao. Does nature have a million vases? No. You do not need a million vases. So this was the original concept of Taoism. It came from this one book. Another guy, a couple centuries later, Zhuangzi, popularized it, wrote some more on it. A couple other books were written, but those two are the really big ones. And that creates the basis of Taoism. Where does it go from there? It goes so many interesting places from there. It goes from being a very simplistic, a very non-ritualized tradition, very philosophical. They like simple things. They do not like pomp and circumstance. They don't like rituals. They don't like, that kind of thing. And Taoism became a lot about rituals and a lot about magic. A lot of stuff got absorbed by Taoism. In some ways, it's similar to Buddhism, where it can, because it's not exclusive, because it is not about worship this one guy and not everybody else, it could work alongside other traditions and absorb other traditions really easily. China has this concept of the three teachings, which is Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. All three are big major players in Chinese everyday life. And Taoism, to a certain extent, has kind of become the mysticism side of that triangle. The Confucianism is more politics, family life, personal interactions. Buddhism is the afterlife and the soul and the spirit. So Taoism absorbs other traditions. It absorbs a lot of Chinese mythology, a lot of Chinese gods, their folklore, folk tales, their great hero tales, their magic, divination, traditions. Basically, all this stuff that Chinese folks already had and didn't want to let go of, Taoism said, okay, we'll take it all. And they got absorbed into Taoism. So the heart of Taoism is still following the way of the Tao. There are just all these other kind of stories and traditions that are kind of hitched along for the ride, where gods are seen as those that have become one with the Tao. There are rituals and magic traditions that are said to be able to help with, seeing the future through the Tao, or that kind of thing. All those things got really absorbed into Taoism, and it became a kind of a mysticism, maybe a little shamanistic, but not exactly. It's a mystic tradition now. there's kind of three branches. Now, this isn't exactly like Protestant versus Catholicism. This is not, a three breakaway where they're all different traditions. It's more, there are three ways of approaching Taoism, and most Taoists will use, in certain times and places, approach the Tao one of this way, or this way, or this way. It doesn't mean they are only doing one way. A lot of them are done by everybody. There's the philosophical Taoism, which is intellectual. It's what it started as, where it was about discussing the metaphysical, it was discussing the wordplay and the spiritual aspect. It was very much about developing wisdom and understanding. Then there is what develops where we can call the mystic side, where Taoists become priest figures in the community who people go to for assistance in performing rituals, daily life and needs, medical treatments. A lot of medicines were developed by Taoist traditions, discovering them as they went looking for the elixir of life. More on that later. They were kind of pharmacists, they were acupuncturists, they did divination, they did rituals for funerals and weddings, and they were a cornerstone of a kind of a mystic tradition. Not as much associated with death and the afterlife and the soul and the spirit as Buddhism, as they were, daily needs like, give me my fortune, divination. Hey, I need a potion to make my dick good. Give me the potion. This is kind of where you've heard probably critiques of rare animals being killed for folk magic. That's this tradition, Taoism as folk ritual and mysticism. The third one is more of the self-help tradition, which is where people figured, okay, the Tao is the way of the universe. Qi is the energy of life that we all need to try and practice using in moderation so we don't waste it. What if we build up our store of Qi so we are so powerful that we don't waste any and we have plenty to spare? That's the self-help program. And from this, we get Tai Chi, which is a combination of Taoist concepts and martial arts. That kind of, the idea is, here, we want to strengthen our mental and physical state to better utilize Qi, to better be part of the Tao and not waste energy by becoming stronger, essentially. And it makes sense, because if you're trying to be a person that doesn't waste energy, that keeps peace, that is patient and calm and loving, meditating and keeping, a healthy mental state, having a healthy body that isn't troubled by stress, like that kind of stuff is pretty on point. A lot of yoga is involved in this, meditation, a lot of hygiene, like specific ways of cleaning the body and keeping cleanse. Tai Chi, as I've said, martial arts, physical practices like that. Let's see. Acupuncture also would be here. I mentioned that. But that's kind of the three basic branches where most Taoists probably are involved in variations of all three, but they kind of form different ways of looking at the Tao. Looking at it from an intellectual point of view, looking at it as a kind of self-help program, looking at it as a mystic tradition of folk rituals and magic. Today in the world, Taoism is biggest in China and Taiwan, the east there. In China, unfortunately, it's changed a little bit because when the Republic of China took over, they believe in freedom of religion, but no superstition. Well, what's Taoism? Oops. When you look at it from this way, it's one, and when you look at it this way, it's the other. So to survive in modern-day China, Taoism has kind of had to change a little bit of how it behaves. Some of the magic has been taken out, some of the rituals a little off to the left. More of the religion and intellectual side has been focused on in the temples in modern China. Taiwan has kept the magic alive. It's really big in Taiwan. There's this tradition there that there's this unbroken line back to ancient Lao Tzu and the Daodejing in Taiwan. It's a pretty big thing over there. There's a lot of temples to Taoism. But it's a lot freer in Taiwan than it is, unfortunately, in its modern China. it also had a big influence on Japan, Korea, everywhere, even though as a specific religion, it's probably biggest in those two places. Beijing has a couple big temples. Yeah. But modern day, it really is part of a trio of the three teachings, as a part of, for one, it's taught in schools, especially back in the day, back in like around the thousands. It was made part of every academic had to learn the Daodejing. Is also now, part of their poetic history. Even if it's not as huge a religion as Buddhism, it had a huge influence on their artwork, on their writing, on politics, even to a certain extent, even though Confucianism definitely had a bigger influence. And of course, Tai Chi and a lot of the self-help stuff has spread to the West quite a bit. That stuff has really taken on over here. Western folks love a good self-help program, and that's probably how most people over in the United States have come across Taoism. But yeah, that is the Tao. I really, really love this. I find myself fond of it in the same way that I find myself fond of Buddhism. Eastern traditions tend to approach the world from a point of view of how should I behave in it, rather than like Christianity, which is you should love this guy. And then they kind of tack on some behavioral stuff. China and Japan and those countries are a lot more about this is how we behave. Yeah, there's some gods over here too, but the core is behavioral, how to be an ethical person, how to live in the flow of the universe. It's really lovely. I really like it. Thanks for joining us, Phil. Have a good one. That is basically everything I had to say. I am going to do another video where I'm going to talk through the actual symbolism and meaning of all the chapters of Daodejing. The first section, the first 10 chapters, will be available to everyone. The rest are going to be only for members, so if you want and you're interested in that, be sure to join and be a member for as little as 99 cents a month. You're going to get lots of bonus content, including this. That should go up tomorrow or Saturday. Hopefully. I'm finished with like the first half, and I gotta finish editing them and uploading them. Today we're probably gonna jump over into watching The Untamed on Discord, because I thought that would be a fun connection, because sidebar, The Untamed really feels like a kind of a low-key discussion of Confucianism versus Daoism, because the Lan clan is totally all about rules and ritual and, how you behave with your family and your clan and obey the rules, and then Wei Ying's over here like, I'm gonna do what's right and live in the moment, and everything is relative, what is good is what is evil, nothing is absolute. He's totally the Dao character. Anyway, I had a lot of fun reading about this and thinking about that show, so we're gonna go back to watching it. If you want to watch stuff with us, or play Jackbox like we did yesterday, other stuff, join the Discord. Lots of cool people, we have a lot of fun, it's a good time. Tomorrow will be Fanfic Friday, and then a stream, don't know what yet, I'll figure it out. And then over the weekend, I don't know if I'll have a video lesson finished, but if I do, it'll be on Sunday. We'll see. I'm still working on some other things, but thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any ideas of other stuff you want to hear me talk about, let me know in the comments. Give me some ideas of things to discuss. I think that's everything. Check the links in the description to learn more about memberships, the benefits you get. Go to my social media accounts and follow those. I'm pretty cool on Twitter. That's everything. Thanks again to all of our members. I think we got a couple here today. We got Phil, Leon, Victor. I think Jeff might have been here for a second. Santa Moratero. Thank you guys for supporting the channel and being lovely people. I will see you guys next time. Bye.